Welcome to Money Making Conversation. I'm your host, Rashawn McDonald. It is time to stop reading other people's success stories and start writing your own. Now, you can be motivated by their success because their stories can offer direction and help you reach your goals through your planning and your committed effort. My interviews provide the consumer and business owner access to celebrities, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and industry decision makers. My next guest is a well-known athlete. Let's go with an athlete, because sometimes when you're an athlete, people won't just keep you over there. His name is Sheldon Williams, the former NBA lottery pick and Duke University Hall of Fame player. We're discussing his career from Oklahoma City to the NBA. In between all that was a little unknown school called Duke University. His life after basketball and how he inspires to give back to the community. That's really why I want him on this show. We hear a lot of things about athletes and we only hear one side of the story. The Shelden Williams Foundation is dedicated to empowering student athletes and their families by delivering and supporting initiatives that provide emotional and physical health through sports, education, and community involvement. Please welcome to Money Making Conversation for the very first time, the athlete, Sheldon Williams. How you doing, Sheldon?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I emphasize athlete because somehow along the way, you guys get diminished. You get diminished on your ability to communicate. You're diminished on your education abilities, your articulation. How do you overcome the athlete stereotype as you move forward in life, Sheldon?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. I mean, until LeBron was probably more the most forefront athlete that sit there and say, don't put us in a box. Mm-hmm. Make sure that we know we are more than what we do, whether we playing football, dribbling basketball, we're more than that. And I think that was the first time they actually said it out loud, I guess, and made it more of a worldly thing. Right. But before then, he was always kept in a box, all right, this is what you do, and this is pretty much it. So a lot of people now are kind of bringing themselves on the main screen hey, this is what I use to get to this point. But the overall me, this is X, Y, and Z. And I try to use my social platform to let people know this is what I do, and not just what I did in the past or what you know me as. This is all me.
I'm going to share you a little piece of my life, Sheldon, because, I'm a sitcom writer, stand-up comedian, did Def Jam and all that. And one of the bigger components of my life was I managed Steve Harvey. And I bring that up because of the fact that, we had a ride together 16 years and, won Emmys together, Image Awards together, and box office movies, Family Feud, hit books. And when I walked away and started to develop my own career, I kind of was still trapped into that world. And so I bring that up because as an NBA lottery pick and at the highest level that an athlete can perform, and that is as a basketball player, you want to make an NBA. How were you able to make that transition? Because a lot of people kept you in that bottle of being an NBA player, or what's going wrong? Why are you not still playing in the NBA? Talk to us through that emotional release of trying to build your brand, the Sheldon Williams brand.
Well, that's always kind of I wouldn't say difficult path. It's a path that you haven't done.
Yes.
Because you've been all your life been trying to be this athlete that you inspire to be, whether you looked up to Michael Jordan or any other guys that play in your position or your sport. You aspire to be those guys. And then once that timeline is pretty much ended, it's okay, what do I do now? So hopefully within that 1 to 2 years before it does actually end, you kind of start thinking about my next move, my next plan. And it's always hard because you always think that this is what it's going to be for a lot of number of years. Right. And it's not always like that. So for me, when I actually started to think about retiring, I wind up saying, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to go ahead and do something that, one, keeps me active with my daughter, who's now 11, as well as keep me within the game of basketball. And I was able to, and fortunate enough to actually be a scout for the Brooklyn Nets on the West Coast. I did that for about 3 years before I said, I want to try my hand into coaching and, be more hands-on than actually, kind of be in the back front office type.
Well, the death of Kobe it was still shocking. I remember I went to LA after his death, and it was like ghost town, man. I had never seen LA, which is like party central, which is like glitz, which is glamour, which is, as they say, Hollywood. And then you mentioned your daughter, daddy's girl. I have I'm a father and I have a daughter. So, the importance of that role that you play and guiding, I'm always available for her to have a comment. And then you see what happens to Kobe and that whole daddy girl syndrome did you get caught up in that? Did you realize your role that you have in with your daughter who's 11 now?
Well, I got caught up in it because, one, my daughter was actually doing things with Gigi's team and the team underneath Gigi's team at the Mamba Academy. Mm-hmm. So she was familiar with both of those, people. Mm-hmm. So when that happened, it kind of hit a little bit closer. I mean, obviously it was sad for anybody to go down like that, mm-hmm. whether it be a well-named person or just anybody. Mm-hmm. But what really hit me was the girls that were around my daughter's age, not able to actually live their life,
right,
and got cut short. Mm-hmm. And talking to her about it, it really hit home for me. I'm like, dang, like literally, these are somebody that you was actually in the academy, Mama Academy, practicing against, mm-hmm. and now all of a sudden they're gone. And it's very sad for that to happen. But that right there kind of hit closer to home to me because of the little girls that were around my daughter's age. I was actually around my daughter as well.
Right. I bring up my daughter because she was a professional athlete. She was a tennis prodigy, so she was homeschooled and she played on the professional tennis tour, and then she blew out her knee. And when she blew out, I always remember like the week before Thanksgiving. And she asked me, she said, Dad, Dad, can I do something else? And I said, what you want to do? She said, I want to go to college. And you being an athlete and, you just was a gifted athlete, smart guy from Oklahoma City. Like you said, you went from junior varsity to varsity. Do you feel that you were ever pushed along, or did anybody ever stop and ask Sheldon what he wanted in the early years? Or you just positioned to be this great athlete and you had no other option?
Well, growing up, my dad, he played basketball. He played in college as well. Mm-hmm. But for me and my younger brother, he didn't want us to follow in his footsteps. He wanted to kind of find our own path.
Right.
Granted, my dad's 6'8", my mom is 5'11".
Right.
Height will be in our future. So I went from playing baseball, mm-hmm. soccer, and football, because Oklahoma is a big football state.
Absolutely.
And then, what's that?
I say, absolutely. You come to Oklahoma City. Come on now. Oklahoma,
right,
come on now.
Right. And then I went into basketball. Uh-huh. So I started playing basketball and football all the way up until my freshman year, where I got moved up to the high school team, because back home, 9th grade was still junior high. Mm-hmm. So I was able to do both those things. But honestly, with my dad, he wanted us to find our own path. And then once we actually found our own path, he was, all right, this is what you want to do. Are you sure? All right, if you're going to do this, then this is what we need to do to get better every year. And he kind of laid out guidelines for me and my younger brother to follow if you want to be successful in that sport.
Well, because we're going to talk about your foundation, but I'm just kind of getting everybody a sense of who you are, your story, because the fact that you're a gifted athlete, there are some steps that go through the process that you can get pushed along. I know that, as my daughter got better, specialized coaches are coming around, because they wanted to fix her backhand, fix her serve, fix her ground strokes and all that. But that's that period. And now fast forward, Sheldon. The IMG academies, you have social media. What was the worst thing you had to deal with when you were coming out of high school that the players have to deal with today? Because technology has to be the one thing. Is it social media, or is it the academies? Is it the circuits? What is it?
Well, for me, I kind of missed that era, because mm-hmm. that didn't come until later on, where right. the whole social media platforms mm-hmm. and the IMGs was kind of later on in my high school career. Mm-hmm. They kind of made it big time. But when I was actually growing up, if you had any kind of success, it was in the front page of newspaper.
Right.
So people reading that, and then all of a sudden people circling, every time they play against you, that, hey, you get a target on your back.
Right.
So it's kind of minor compared to what it is with the social media. But if you read the paper or your parents got the paper and your picture's on the front page of that sports section, people start paying attention to who you are.
Right.
And then all of a sudden your name kind of circulates throughout your whole area and people try to come after you from that.
Because social media exists now, and it's like certain people shouldn't be on social media. You know that too, Sheldon. Certain people should be cut off. They Twitter to cut Donald Trump. They need to be cutting some of these athletes. So because you're a mentor now, you're a mentor. You as one of those been there, done that. The success is part of your resume. Duke University Hall of Famer. And I would tell you this, Sheldon. I wasn't a big fan of yours because you were just so good in college and you played for Duke. I would just tell you, I love you as a man, as a person, because Duke was just, man. How did you pick Duke, man? You in Oklahoma, football country, UT right there. University of Texas is right there. You know what I'm saying? How did you go way over to Duke to play basketball?
Well, that's a question that I got asked a lot when I was leaving the state of Oklahoma. Like my high school teammate with the OU, my high school AAU teammate with the OU. So they try to do like a package deal.
Right.
Have all three of us go, kind of like, Oklahoma boys stay in Oklahoma, which was cool. But you trying to tell me the best of both worlds, Duke academics,
right,
and Duke basketball, and you have a chance to go there? Mm-hmm. How does that compare? Like my dad was a big educator, so right. Education was very high on our list of schools when we actually looking for schools to play for. Mm-hmm. So to have the best of both worlds, it didn't compare Duke, Texas, Duke, OU. It didn't, any other Big 12 schools it didn't compare.
What's this shit? Stop, Rashawn, stop. It was no comparison, brother. Okay, UT maybe, OU no way, Duke, exceptional university. Because a lot of people, when you see a powerhouse like a Duke, you tend to throw them in a pot and forget the academics that comes with a school like Duke. Tell us about the academic standards that they have there and why Duke is such a strong academic school.
Well, the academic standards was, like I said, one of the major reasons why I chose that. Like my dad, as I said before, was a big educator. Mm-hmm. So he stressed education on us all the time. With him being a teacher, mm-hmm. we had assignments and projects all year round. Right. So whatever we had going on for school, if we didn't have homework, best believe that my dad came home like, all right, well, we got this project to do, or you got to read for an hour on this book right here. So it was always him pushing us to do something to further us along mm-hmm. with our education. So mm-hmm. once we got to Duke, it was the same thing where you were in classes, you're in study hall, you in all kinds of study groups that kind of make yourself, put yourself in a good position to actually be successful. So a lot of the times where you think you may not know something, Duke did a good job of having people accessible to talk to help you along the way. Mm-hmm. And also, just with the education alone, we know that if you got a piece of paper from Duke, right, it's going to set you up for whatever you want to do later on.
Now, when you talk about yourself, sir, as a player, when do you start making a conscious decision that it's time to move on when you're an athlete? Because that's the hardest decision, because of the fact that it's something, some ways you don't plan for an exit. How do you know and also the second question is that when did the Shelden Williams Foundation get started? Was it during your playing days or after you left the court?
Well, it was always in my mind. The Sheldon Williams Foundation was always in my mind to do. I just didn't have time to do it because once I got done playing, I had my daughter, the whole off season. So with me playing, my daughter was getting older and was like, Daddy, how come you're always away? And that kind of got to me because she doesn't understand we're trying to make a living for her. All she sees is Daddy is on a road trip or Daddy's gone for whatever amount of days. That's all she's seeing. Mm-hmm. So it kind of got to me. And that's why I kind of retired a little bit early because I was like, you know what? You're right. Some things are more important mm-hmm. and you are more important. So I wind up retiring early so I can spend extra time with her. And as I said before, I kind of, got into a job where I was still able to do basketball with the West Coast scouting mm-hmm. and then be with her. Mm-hmm. But kind of going back to your question about the Sheldon Williams Foundation, that was something I had already in mind. It was just a matter of doing it. So once I retired, I want to say it took about a year before I started doing anything about it, because that whole year I took off, it was just me and my daughter.
Right.
And I was making sure that I was doing ballet classes and recitals and all those other things that I didn't think of myself doing. But I'm over here front row, doing all that stuff, just kind of being with her and making up for lost time and everything. But I wanted to do that because, one, I grew up. My mom was big into doing charity, foundation, whatever you want to call it, nonprofit type work. Growing up, when I was doing Ronald McDonald House, I was doing Feed the Homeless, Mobile Meals. Those things were already instilled in me. It was just a matter of just getting me back into the swing of things and getting that opportunity to actually fully invest myself in doing that. And that's why I started Shelden Williams Foundation about 2 years ago.
Okay, now you said the Sheldon Williams Foundation is dedicated to empowering student athletes and their family by delivering and supporting initiatives that promote emotional and physical health. Let's stop right there. I got the physical health. What is the emotional and physical health through sports, education, and community involvement? Talk to us about that.
Well, as you see, a lot of kids nowadays, they're dealing with a lot more than, I wouldn't say a lot more. I think it's more addressed now than it was back when I played. Because if you had any kind of situation where off-court problems or, family issues, once you got on the court, a lot of coaches are like, hey, do this. If you can't do it, I'll find somebody else that does that, that would do that. Now, fast forward for all these years, like, hey, I noticed that you're not being yourself. Come over and talk to me. What's going on? Getting to that point where, you're more than just, an athlete. You're a human being. You're a person. So I want to make sure that I'm tying into what you're doing as well and talking to you as a human being and not just a person that comes, and not just like a factor that comes in and out. How it is with sports where things change so fluidly, like everybody's coming in and out. I want to make sure that that I'm here to talk. This is beyond basketball.
It's really important because, like I said, I can relate to a lot of the things that you're talking about because my wife was with Mike. She retired. She was a practicing optometrist, and she retired so my daughter could travel and make sure that a stranger wasn't tied to my daughter, making sure my daughter was, not being mistreated physically because, like you're saying, as an athlete, people will push you and guess what? And push you beyond, because I see so many stories about tremendous athletes who failed because they were put in situations that were uncomfortable and they didn't have mentors or they refused to tell their parents what was going on out of fear. What made you survive? Because I love the way you keep bringing up your parents. This whole conversation during this interview we're doing, Sheldon, you constantly mention your parents. That really is the key to you and who you are today, right? Your parents.
Of course. I mean, my parents is what made me who I am today. Me and my younger brother, who I am today, or who we are today, should I say. Like, if they wasn't able to instill those things into us, we wouldn't be where we are right now, or what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish right now. So it's a big credit to what they did for us growing up. And now it's more so like, hey, you see a version of them in us as we are doing things that we're trying to do later on down life. So I would say, me always mentioning my parents, there's a reason for that because they played and still are playing a big factor in my life.
Now, here's the interesting thing about both our lives. We're Black men, Sheldon. And I tell people, I got to go back, to George Floyd. And like I said, you and I both know that I can speak for myself. A cop stops me for anything, my flags go up. I don't feel comfortable, especially at night. I don't really feel comfortable at all. And so is that part of the education process that you're talking about, the community involvement process that you're talking about, trying to develop relationships for young Black men and female young ladies can be able to get through life, and sports is just one of the tools that they can get them out of the neighborhood or giving them positive options, because the world sees us for who we are based on the color of our skin. I don't care what anybody says. The color of our skin creates a different conversation. How do you correlate that within your foundation, the Shelden Williams Foundation?
Sadly, there is a talk that we constantly have to have for people that look like you and me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we have to do every time. And it's sad to say, but we have to continue to do that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff, especially this year, has been more and more recorded, seen, going viral, whatever that you're saying or whatever you think it is. It's been going on for decades and decades, but yet we're seeing more and more almost on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And a conversation that needs to continue to happen for people that look like us has to be a forefront conversation, because if you're not blessed enough to come from, like where I came from, a 2-parent home,
right,
where I was able to have these conversations daily about what to do in these situations. A lot of these kids don't have that. So having somebody that actually can talk them through these things, so they're not another statistic ended up like the people you mentioned, which is sad to say, but that's how it is for us living nowadays.
I know because we're having a real conversation now, and I'm not saying we didn't have one earlier, but because of the fact that you and I both know, you're a taller black man than me, which means that dude, as successful as I have been in my life, I've walked by, saw white women clutch their bags. I've saw them look at me in a manner that I think that they feared that I was going to do something. And I'm in tailored suits. I've walked into places and people have questioned with a look as to why I'm in that facility or why I'm in that restaurant or why am I walking down that street. But with that being said, athletes has always proven to be a vehicle of change, a vehicle of opportunity. But like we also stated with LeBron, he's trying to peel back this, we're only there to do a service. And that's a physical service. And I feel that's part of what you're trying to do with the Shelden Williams Foundation, correct? You're more than delivering a physical service. You're developing people who are taxpayers, who are going to get education, who are going to make a difference in the community. That seems to be the core of the Shelden Williams Foundation. Am I correct?
Yes. I mean, you kind of pretty much hit it on the head for a lot of these youth that I'm trying to help and give back and give opportunities to a lot of the undeserving, families and people that want to be able to get out of situations they are in right now. I mean, you kind of said it already, how you being tailored suits. Me, I already have kind of 2 strikes against me being tall and black.
Right.
So a lot of, when I'm walking down the street, you do see those things. And I'm a guy that I'm not necessarily over, joyous when I'm walking around. Like, if I know you, then it's something different. But
right.
If I'm walking around, I'm very, very stoic.
Right.
All of a sudden, like, people would take that as a sign of, I don't know, something that makes them afraid.
Yes.
And that's something that I've been dealing with from pretty much day one.
Yes.
And seeing this, I have to actually hey, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Make myself even make sure they feel more comfortable, which is sad that I have to actually do this.
Absolutely. You got to make them feel more comfortable. You have to change the way you walk. You have to change your tone to make people feel more comfortable. Well, guess what? You're already comfortable. Like I said, I just wanted to just bring that out, because on this show, I try to have honest conversations. You can do a lot of interviews, Sheldon, and these interviews are about the success of your career. But we're talking about now and how you have to change lives now. And like you said, a couple of years ago, you started the Shelden Williams Foundation. It's an extension of who you are. Is this the voice of who you are now? Because at one point, the voice of who you were was an athlete. Is this your voice now?
This is pretty much my voice, part A, part B, like building up. As you keep growing, you keep evolving.
Right. And
that's something that we as human beings continue to do. So a lot of people, especially before social media, you only see the athlete. And then if you follow me on social media, you'll see I'm talking about my daughter, social issues, you'll see, like I said, part 1, part 2, part 3, you're seeing a lot of stuff that's going on and that's evolving as I evolve as a person and the person I'm going to become in the future. But it's always ever changing. So you always going to get something different than you may see a month, a year ago, whatever the case may be, you will see that I'm not going to be just put into a category, a box. I'm always going to try to help and try to extend myself and do more things where I'm not going to be just one category.
Okay, let's have some fun here. You're former lottery pick. You're a former NBA player. You watching games. We see the big three that they put together in Brooklyn. Can they win it all, Sheldon? Can they win it all?
Well, the thing is, until this past year, LeBron and AD were the first team to win right off the bat.
Right.
When they got together for a long time. I mean, when LeBron and D Wade and Chris Bosh, when they got together, they didn't win right off the bat. They had to wait a couple years before they won their first one. I mean, you have all these different big threes as forming. The last time I seen a big three to form that won right off the bat was back in Boston when KG, Paul, and Ray Allen first formed up. And it's difficult to do, especially with guys that demand the ball as much as they did. I know they had a hard loss last night, but I don't really pay attention to that loss just because, like with me being at Duke, a lot of people circle our number on the calendar to make sure that, hey, no matter what we're doing, we're going to get up for this game. And that's how it is for Brooklyn Nets right now. A lot of people get up for that game. So they lost to Washington Wizards by, I want to say, 1 or 2 points. And it was a high-scoring game. But until Washington Wizards can continue to do and play like that, that game doesn't really mean, it doesn't hold much weight just because they lost.
That's the nature of playing, 72 games this season. But when you talk about playing a game and watching a career, and Sheldon, I look at the honors or your jersey number and seeing Duke being a Hall of Famer. What stands out to be the most impressive thing that has happened in your career that you would always go, man, I can't believe that happened to me? Because you've gotten them all, Gatorade Awards, All-American honors, lottery pick, walked on the stage and recognized in front of 1,000 people as one of the top athletes in the world. What always brings a smile to your face when you think about it from an athletic standpoint?
I'm probably going to say being able to have the opportunity to have my jersey hung in the rafters of Cameron Indoor Stadium, being one of 13 guys.
That's a bad rafter there. Christian Laettner, Jay Williams. That's a bad rafter there, baby. Grant Hill. Come on now. Shane Battier. See, I know Duke, man.
If all the great players that play at Duke, my name and my jersey will be forever hung in that Raptors. So I would say that's probably the greatest one because, like, being a kid out of Oklahoma, I didn't see myself, leaving the state of Oklahoma because at that time, I've only seen one player leave the state of Oklahoma and play. That was Eton Thomas, who left to go to Syracuse.
Right.
Then everybody stayed in the state of Oklahoma. So once I got a chance to actually play for Duke University, and then as my career started unfolding and I had an opportunity to become a player that I was going to become and have that opportunity to have my jersey retired, that was a true blessing because I didn't go into Duke thinking that. I went into Duke trying to think, hey, I got to prove a lot of people wrong from back home in Oklahoma that I can play with the biggest and the best of the college basketball and in the best ACC conference.
Wow. Well, Sheldon, thank you for coming on Money Making Conversation. Man, you're a great talker, boy. You know what I'm saying? You got some words coming out your mouth, my friend. You have that little laid back, little stoic personality, but man, you can talk, man. You got something to say, and continue to make a difference. I know that we was connected, and it's an interview long overdue for us to connect. COVID slowed down the relationship. With 2021, we know what COVID's going to do from an athletic standpoint. We see how it's affecting the high schools, college level, and players who want to go pro, or players who want to extend their athletic careers are being cut short, or they're given an extra year of eligibility. But I know that if you ever need me, my man, Sheldon Williams, Rashawn McDonald's a friend, and I'm always there for you, brother. And I hope you enjoyed this interview.
I appreciate that. I did enjoy the interview. I appreciate you having me on. It was great talk, great discussions. Also, for us to actually talk about not just basketball, but the whole life experience and topics was great for me to actually talk to you about it. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate my time.
Well, the great thing about it, Sheldon, is that you know me now. That when we talk in the future, it's going to be a different, because coming on when I say hello, a friend saying hello to you. And we're going to talk about life, man. Just life, about making sure you and the brand that you're building now is important and affects millions of people, not just hundreds, but millions of people, because your brand's worldwide. And social media allows that to happen. The digital platform allows that to happen. And my job is to make sure that you are a blessing to everybody, because the Shelden Williams Foundation, like I stated earlier, is dedicated to empowering student athletes and their families by delivering and supporting initiatives that promote emotional and physical health through sports, education, and community involvement. Again, thank you for coming on Money Making Conversation, Sheldon Williams.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. If you want to hear more Money Making Conversation interviews, please go to moneymakingconversation.com or subscribe at our YouTube channel. I'm Rashawn McDonald. I'm your host.